First Hand in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions is brought to you by Newport First Hand Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.
Alright, so it's now time for First Hand in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. We say a Happy New Year and welcome to Melvin Henry. Good morning, Melvin. How are you?
Good morning, Althea. Good morning to our listeners. Happy New Year to you. 2025, and we're alive.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. And not only have we survived, Melvin, 2024, which was a rough year, I know, for agriculture, but we are, I think, I'm getting a sense that there is a lot of optimism in the sector. I don't know how you're reading it.
Yes, definitely. This is something that continues to baffle a lot of persons. The level of resilience that our farmers have. I mean, as you rightly said, last year was one that was really challenging for months. Nevertheless, we're seeing our farmers being who they are. 2 years coming to the fore, so a lot of activities are happening now as we speak in the field as farmers seek to get back to productive ways. So yes, we are a resilient set of people.
And we need to get our farmers back to productive ways because, Melvin, as consumers, we're buckling under the weight of these prices, I tell you. You know,
yes,
so
yes,
the more productive our farmers are, the better the prices that we get the produce, and the farmers still make good profit. Because if they increase the volume, then it makes it much easier for the prices to be at a price point where consumers can be more supportive of all of their wonderful and massive efforts. So we have to support our farmers, but we also need to be mindful that's the consumers that are going to keep them in business. All right, so Melvin, this morning you're turning the spotlight on plant viruses. I noticed that you really have been taking a look at that of late, and my question is, why are you paying such attention to plant viruses?
So, in all honesty, Althea and the listeners, plant viruses, I mean, we're just on the heels of having what was known as a pandemic as it relates to COVID and the significant losses and impact that it had on the globe. So whilst at level there was and still is and still remains a concern as it relates to the impact of viruses in agriculture, the fact that plants occupy 80% of the biomass on the planet, and we do have viruses that impacts or affects plants, and to narrow it down in agriculture, it simply means that it must be a concern or a conversation that is had with a high level of frequency, given the fact that it threatens food security. And once that is threatened, then our survival is also in question. So the food production and food security issue that is aligned or linked to viruses would be part and parcel of the reason why, as a company at Newport First, and we seek to pay a lot of attention to viruses. It is also well documented that the annual bill or the annual loss, rather, associated with plant viruses could be anywhere around 30 billion US dollars. So with that said, any conversation, any message that can be sent, any measures that can be implemented to sort of a cushion or curtail the impact of plant viruses in agriculture is one that is worthy to be having on a frequent basis. In addition to that, if you have a conversation with most of our farmers, and quite rightly so, you'll you will hear that as it relates to their concerns in the field, insect pests and mites are among the top concerns, and that is accurate. The only disconnect at times is that there isn't a clear grasping of some of the rippling effects of having these, whether it be sucking or chewing insects, mites, in your field. So I'll use a simple analogy. When we speak of viruses that are transmitted by the vector mosquito, we're not, in principle, really concerned about the bite of the mosquito. And quite frankly, you may snap that mosquito, spray, get rid of that mosquito in quick time. But the true question is, what did that mosquito leave before you actually killed? In other words, we talk about, for example, white flies, which are one of the major vectors of plant viruses. And a vector, we mean that this organism has the ability to transmit the virus. White flies, for example, are numbered as one of the top. It's one of the top transmitters. Now, if you see whitefly in the field and you're able to respond appropriately with an insecticide, so you see it was spotted in the morning, in the evening you have a clean field. In fact, you're having no motion of whitefly. The reality is, oftentimes the damage was already done, meaning that the whitefly population would have already transmitted a virus which now remains within the system of the plant. And so it is that, again, Althea, the conversation is one that is necessary, and the better we are in terms of our community, technocrats and practitioners in terms of farmers, about what is happening and how we can come together to deal with the issue, the better we are in terms of ensuring that food production continues and by extension food security.
Now, Melvin, you know me, I'm a teacher, so I take nothing for granted. And so what I want to find out next is, what exactly are plant viruses and how do they normally enter plant cells?
Okay, so plant viruses are really microscopic, very tiny organisms that can infect a plant. So it therefore means that if you enter a field, you will not see the sign of a virus, but you'll see symptoms, only because you are not able to see these organisms with the naked eye. It requires a microscope for you to see the virus. So unlike you seeing a whitefly, that's a sign, or a bug, that's a sign, versus the bite, which is the symptom, that the same does not obtain for viruses. Those have to be analyzed at the lab. The reality is that there are several of them that infect a wide range of our agricultural plants and ornamentals as well. The thing about them is that they're able to be transmitted, as pointed out earlier, via vectors. So organisms that transmit, and some of the examples, the whiteflies, aphids, leafhoppers, which are becoming more and more a serious concern for the region in the transmission of viruses. You have some mites as well, thrips. So these organisms that most of our farmers are familiar with their damage. The fact of the matter is that the infectors are able to transmit it. Tiny organisms that enters through their feeding, and in addition to that, if some of these viruses can be transmitted where you actually have damage to plant tissues. So the external tissues become broken, and you sometimes have sap oozing from the system of the plant. Via that means as well, you can have the transmission of virus from one plant to another.
Thank you so very much for that. And having said that, what are some of the major symptoms associated with a viral infection in plants? I know that you referenced COVID earlier, and we were advised what we're to look out for in terms of some COVID symptoms, and we do know as well that there are other diseases out there that can mimic another one. I wonder if it's the same thing with plants. It's the same thing with plants, right?
Very, 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 very good point made there as it relates to mimicking of different issues within the field. And so it calls on a level of expertise to make the distinction between what one might perceive as being the real issue versus what is indeed the real issue. And later on we'll look at a few examples. So as it relates to symptoms within the field, one of the most common symptoms is what we refer to as a mosaic pattern, leaf pattern. And simply put, what that means is that you have a leaf that, based on our knowledge, understanding, and experience, that leaf really should consist of one uniform shade of green. However, once there's a viral infection, instead of having this steady uniform color of green, we see where there is, as the name suggests, mosaic. So you have some areas being darker green, lighter green, bright yellow, lighter yellow. So this is something that we see throughout as a major symptom of a viral infection. Now, since you made mention of the fact that there could be a confusion of a viral infection with something else, let me hasten to say that this has been, it is a common practice. Oftentimes, the yellowing of a leaf, or depending on who is viewing the leaf, is seen or diagnosed right on the spot as a fungal problem. And it is reasonable to understand that if it is that you're having a viral problem and not a fungal problem, if you choose to apply a fungicide in this scenario, in this case, the problem will persist. You still have the problem because you are treating for the wrong thing from the get-go. And so it is that with the abundance of caution, we normally advise our farmers to ensure that the proper diagnosis is made ahead of. I mean, fungal diseases are something, because some of them do have signs before you see symptoms, because you can sometimes see the spores of the fungi on the leaves. But when it comes down to the confusion, it is likely to happen, and as such, calling on the expertise of technocrats is always advised. Another symptom that is normally seen is the curling or crinkling of leaves. And as the name suggests, your leaves start to have these unusual puckering and curl, which is an expression of the viral load within the system of the plant. And later on we'll get
Melvin? I think we just lost Melvin, but we're on the break, so let us just clear that, and then when we come back, he'll be back with us.
Farmers! Are diamondback moths, cabbage loopers, armyworms, budworms, cutworms, melonworms, aphids, leaf miners, whiteflies among those pests threatening to strike your crop? Well, wait no longer. Strike first with First Strike Insecticide from Newport First and Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.
We're inside the feature First and in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. Melvin Henry, Technical Manager, is with us, and we lost him just ahead of the break, but he's back with us. He is taking a look with us this morning at plant viruses. What are some of the issues that farmers are facing with plant viruses? And then, of course, he will offer us the solutions. Melvin, as we continue to take a look at this issue, I really want to find out how it is that a plant virus really impacts the overall health of the plant. How does this, say, reduce yield and affect the quality of the farm produce?
Okay. So just now we were looking at some of the symptoms of the plant being infected by a virus. The first one we looked at was the mosaic pattern, meaning that you have an uneven color, the loss of chlorophyll, which is the green pigment in the leaf. Now, let us just revisit the fact that the plant leaves are known as the major manufacturing center for a plant. So if you're talking about, let's say, yams, the production of what is stored beneath the soil takes place within the leaves. So it therefore means that if there is any defect in terms of color, in terms of size, in terms of shape of your leaves, then your leaves will not be functioning at full capacity. And as a result of that, it therefore means that there are times when this impacts the growth and the productivity of the plant, because now you have a damaged production center that sustains the entire plant. Your leaves are damaged, be they curled, be they crinkled, be they yellowed, or having that mosaic pattern. All of that comes to bear on how well that plant will thrive and ultimately how it produces this. So oftentimes farmers would see, for example, the abortion or the dropping of thrust, as it is commonly referred to in parts like St. Elizabeth. It's because of the fact that there's a viral infection affecting the productivity of your leaves, and ultimately, because of the plant being in a position not to sustain, be it young flower, young fruit, as a result of that, unable to take care of them, it shed. Now, despite the fact, so whilst we look at the overall yield reduction, which is pretty easy to understand, that if your leaves are off, then your overall outcome, being the leaves being your major site of manufacturing, the manufacturing center is down, then your production will also be down. But there's also another part to this discussion that is of serious importance. So there are times when you do happen to take a produce to harvest, and let me say to harvest instead of to maturity, but the quality of the produce is compromised, meaning that you don't have the same color, texture, sugar content, stuff like those, because again there was an interruption of some critical process. So you'll find a produce that is it did the time in the field that is normally required to take it to maturity, but you'll find that the tissues of the flesh of the fruit that they're consuming does not have the same consistency, and this is coming directly as a result of one. So let's follow the path. You have a fruit developing. That fruit requires consistent supply of what was produced in the leaf to help it mature and to have the good quality. The viral particles within the virus within the system of the plant actually essentially what it does is that it shuts off that supply line between your leaves and your produce. So imagine you're baking a cake out here and you should go 1 hour for that cake, but at 30 minutes, for some reason, there's a disconnection of the gas line. It therefore means that you'll have to remove that cake from oven in a state that is not ready or suitable for consumption. And it's a similar thing that happens. Once the line is disconnected by the viral particles within the system of the plant, it therefore means that your produce will not develop as you're accustomed to see them develop. So managing the viral load, the viral infection within our plant is of critical importance to determine not only the outcome in terms of yield, but also the quality of the produce at the end of the crop cycle.
There is a message that I just got, and I'm going to read it to you exactly as I got it. It says, why isn't your expert telling farmers how to use their smartphone and camera to identify the virus? I know that there are some apps out there now, Melvin, that allow you to do that. Is that something you recommend? And even if you recommend it, don't you still recommend bringing in the expert?
Yes, because so I'm glad you touched on that part before I respond, because oftentimes understanding partially a particular matter instead of fulsome can sometimes lead to dire consequences. As it relates to the identification of pests and diseases, that is something that I know that my team at Newport First Hand, and by extension, long before us, the ministry's team, rather, is something that ongoing training sessions in terms of how to identify. With the advent of technology, of course, we have farmers who we would have trained to use technology more. So, for example, once upon a time you had farmers guessing what was the size of a particular property. Through our intervention, they are now able to use their smartphone to measure accurately and even give you a map from that. So there's a lot of infusion of technology. And I must include that one of the technologies that have been around for quite some time, I've seen in the field now, all of our team members, nearly all of our team members are equipped with a field microscope. So we have situations where we are into the field now, and farmers would say, no, there's nothing on the leaves. And connecting to their phones, we're able to show them that mice are all over the leaves and making their trek in real time. So to say that there isn't the inclusion of technology or the impression to use technology where applicable would be incorrect. If you say that we can up the ante, that I will agree with, and the plans are in place as we go in the field on a daily basis. We're carrying more tools and showing our farmers how to utilize those practices in diagnosis and response to issues.
Thank you, Melvin. Are there particular crops, major agricultural crops in this country that are at more risk for viral infections?
Yes, the most, I'm actually struggling to find a crop of economic importance that is not at risk at this point in time. So I started just now because let us look, for example, at our cucumbers. So all of our vine crops, melon, honeydew, cantaloupe, zucchini, squash, cucumbers, all of these crops are prone to at least one viral infection that impacts productivity. I mean, I've spent the last couple of weeks with a high regularity with my team, with our team working in parts of St. Elizabeth, Manchester. And the farmers will tell you that there are a number of challenges now being experienced as it relates to the production of a lot of our vine crops, watermelon, cucumbers, you name it, that are a direct result of the impact of viral loads within the system of the plant. So once the vectors and all of these plants, might I add, that all of these plants, once you have a foliage, a part of a plant that attracts a vector, be it aphid, whitefly, thrips, mites, uppers, it simply means that you're at risk of contracting a viral load. And the results, the net results or the outcome are as described before, where your yields are reduced and the quality of the produce harvested are also compromised.
And Melvin, that's a lot that is going on, and I'm very happy that we're having this conversation because people are having these challenges, and some of them not even aware of what is causing these issues. I'm very happy that that is what we're discussing this morning. Let's just take our final break for the program, and when we come back, we take a look at some of the solutions. You've already hinted at some of them, but I want to delve a little bit deeper in terms of how it is that we can help our farmers to get the best results despite these kinds of challenges. All right, we are into the final segment of the program for this morning. Melvin, the person who sent the question earlier says you have avoided answering the question. That's not what I got from your response, but can you clarify in terms of whether or not you are indeed saying to the farmers, if you have these facilities available to you where you can use technology to identify some of these viruses, please go ahead and do so.
Okay, so in terms of, so if it's specific to the identification of viruses, we have always been quick to make reference or referral to the Borders Research Station and SRCs that are equipped with the requisite resources to determine what exactly we're working with or we're seeing. So where the capacity to isolate and to determine specifically is concerned, that is something that is always a part of our MO and infrastructure.
So you encourage farmers to be independent in their thinking, yes, and where it is that technology is available to them, they should go ahead and do so, but also be mindful that they're not operating in a vacuum. There are others around them that might be impacted by whatever is going on their property.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're saying to the farmer who is asking these questions, feel free to go ahead, and if you have software, you know of something that is going to help you to identify these kinds of issues, it is really in your best interest to do so. So no one is saying don't go ahead and do that. If you want to invest in the technology, then as a matter of fact, Melvin, we encourage them to invest in whatever new technology is going to bring better results or yield better results on their farm. That being said, with an understanding that most, if not all, of our crops have economic importance, Melvin, and you have already highlighted that you can't think of one crop of economic importance that has not had these kinds of challenges in terms of viral infections. How then do we proceed to minimize the incidence and the impact of these viruses on our crops?
Okay, so having established earlier how significant an impact of a viral infection can be on a particular crop, it is, I would think that it is reason enough for us to be on the same page, or seek to be on the same page as it relates to how we conduct our affairs consistently in a quest to minimize the incidences and the impact. So one of the first things that we normally, and I'll use sweet potato as an example, there are two main viruses that normally affect sweet potato. One being the sweet potato chlorotic stunt virus, and as the name suggests, one of the symptoms of a viral infection is that your plant becomes stunted. So that rate of growth that is normal is not experienced. So it grows at a slower rate, and more often than not, does not reach the length or the altitude that it normally does. The second one affecting sweet potato is the sweet potato feathery mottle disease. So there's this mottling on the leaves, feathery mottling on the leaves, which is a symptom. Now, quite honestly, any of these two diseases that affect sweet potato by themselves, so if you have one of the two, the impact is less than you having both within the system of the plant at the same time. Research has shown that if you have the infection of both the sweet potato chlorotic stunt virus and the sweet potato feathery mottle virus, you could have yield loss of in excess of 50%, and that is significant. Now, as it relates to response, it is in your best interest, and we're using sweet potato, as I said before, as an example. Sweet potato is normally propagated. New fields are established using cuttings, slips from old fields. Now, it is in your best interest as a farmer about to establish a new sweet potato field. So one, determine from the existing source, be it yours or a farmer friend, what the performance of the crop was like. One, it would also be useful to have the intervention of a technical person to determine whether or not there are any symptoms of one or both of the viruses mentioned just now. And the reason for that is that it's a no-brainer. If you remove an infected planting material from an infected field, you will be now seeking to establish, or you will be now establishing a new field that already has that problem. So there are certain symptoms. There's, for example, when there's a viral infection, and this again can be confused, and that is where technocrats are required. There is a shade, a tint of purpling that can be seen on some varieties. Again, understanding the varieties makes a difference, and that is why it cannot be left to just trying to do things in isolation, as you rightly said that. There must be the inclusion of a technocrat. We have a very robust system at RADA. We have a unit, in fact, that is designated or mandated to lead the charge as it leads to.
Unless, of course, sometimes, Melvin, the farmer is him or herself an agronomist, and so they sometimes have that technical know-how, or they are involved in research. One final question for you, because I'm fast running out of time. What are some of your team's observations with these viral symptoms in recent times, and how have you been responding? And I can only give you 2 minutes to respond.
Okay. So what we've been observing is that like I said before, there's hardly anywhere that you can traverse, especially in our vegetable producing areas. So you call the vegetable, there will be a yes in terms of the identification or observation of viral loads. Sweet pepper, tomato, cotton, corn, onions, okras, a lot of leafhoppers now transmitting viruses. So that's observation. In terms of a response, we're seeing farmers, and we have been advocating for farmers to have what we call a robust vector control program, meaning that you're selecting pesticides that are aligned to controlling or eliminating those vectors that are known to be transmitting those viruses. Sticking to the labels in terms of dosage and the frequency and also rotation is critical. And might I add, it would be remiss of me not to say that this is all a part of an integrated pest management, because chemicals are not the all and end all as it relates to our response to controlling our vectors. We have included in the fight against virus the Star Virucide, which is something that we advise our farmers to use from nursery and to stick to the protocol in terms of the frequency. And what the Star Virucide does is that if you already have an infection within the system of the plant, the Star Virucide, upon entry of the cell of the plant, it actually encapsulates or surrounds, arrests the viral particle, thereby preventing it replicating into more particles and causing greater damage in terms of clogging of your tissues within the system of the plant. So that is something that we're on the ground daily advocating our farmers how to implement these programs to reduce the impact of these known viruses, which are, as I said before, can be identified anywhere you turn in our vegetable producing area.
All right, thank you so very much, Melvin, for that. I have no doubt that you're going to continue to address these issues in a way that significantly helps our farmers. I trust that as you go throughout the rest of this year, that you will continue to work closely with the farmers to address these concerns that they might have. Thank you very much, my brother, and looking forward to our next engagement.
Thanks for having me, Auntie. Always a pleasure.
All right, take care. Melvin Henry there. A quick word from them, and then we're wrapping the show.
First and in the field, real issues, real solutions was brought to you by Newport First and Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.